Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to a tutorial Let's Play of Sid Meier's Civilization V. Usually I play the game on a relatively high difficulty, but often I've had people asking if I could make a set of videos for people who have never played the game before and may not really know what's going on. So that's what this is going to be. It's going to be a low difficulty game of Civ 5. I'm going to play on a smaller map, try to keep the game a little bit shorter, but also really go into detail about everything about the gameplay step by step. I've even gone and reset my settings so that I'm back to sort of the normal version of things. Now, the first thing you have to do is make sure you have Brave New World. Brave New World is one of two expansions for Civilization 5. There's Gods and Kings and then Brave New World. Brave New World is the only thing you need. Everything that was included in the base version of the game and the Gods and Kings expansion, all the gameplay features will be present if you have Brave New World. The only thing the other expansion and the various other DLCs will add is different map types and more civilizations that you can play. And certainly you may want to look into those once you've got a little bit of experience under your belt, but the base version gives you tons and tons of options and flexibility and lots of replay value as is. But make sure you have Brave New World. There's going to be a lot of mechanics that we talk about in this game that only exist in there, and that includes hit points and combat and religion and all kinds of different things. If you only have the base version of Civ 5, it's going to seem not quite right to you. If you can get the complete edition or the gold pack or whatever it's called these days, and it does come on sale quite often on a lot of different websites, including Steam. Take a look at the options very quickly before we start. I'm going to be running like this. I've made a couple of changes here and there. I've gone and turned off the music volume just because on YouTube music can be a bit of an issue. I am not running full screen just because of the way that I'm recording things. You'll want to set this exactly as whatever works best for your computer. The big question that is going to affect the gameplay are going to be the game options and the interface options. I'll let you see my options. I think everything here is set to the default. And I think on game options, I may have turned off a few things. Most notably, I turned off the advisor pop-ups because whatever they're going to tell you in game is basically what I'm going to be telling you right now. You'll probably want to leave those on for yourself. But I think everything else may be on the default here, so we'll go there. Next, what we're going to do is go into single player mode. The multiplayer works great in Civ 5, well, pretty well in Civ 5, but we're going to be focusing on single player. Now, you can hit play now, but if you do that, it's just going to set you up with a few default settings, and it's not going to give you the opportunity to customize your experience, including pick your leader. So instead, we're going to go to setup game. Setup game will let us pick what kind of world we want and what kind of leader we may want. I'll also point out that there's an advanced setup button over here that gives you even more options, but we're going to ignore that for now. We're just going to focus on the default setup. So there are 5 settings that you can tweak with. We're going to start actually by the bottom. The first thing you can set is the game pace. Now, I definitely recommend if this is your first game, stay on standard, or if this is your first few games, because the longer games, you're going to maybe, if you're ever interested in doing that, you're going to want to wait until you at least know how you play the game first. Because your first game, you're going to want it to be short. You want to be able to sort of get through the first game and then call it done, and then use what you've learned to put it into maybe a more real game. So we're going to leave it on standard game pace. The difficulty level defaults to Chieftain. You can actually drop it all the way down to Settler if you want. This is probably unnecessary. On Chieftain, the game is still relatively easy. I think on Settler, the AI will literally never, ever declare war on you. At all, ever. So it's really, you can sort of play at your own pace. But even on Chieftain level, it is very unlikely that the AI will be aggressive towards you. If there's going to be any wars, it'll probably be you starting with that. I'll note that at Prince difficulty is what they call normal difficulty, where the AI doesn't really have any advantages or disadvantages compared to you. AI means artificial intelligence, computer players, the other civilizations that will be out there. And then once you get past Prince, then the AI starts to get a bigger and bigger advantage over you. So we're going to leave it on Chieftain, because that's the default. The map size defaults to small, and again, I really recommend that you play on small as opposed to standard. I believe it defaults to small, despite what you would think with standard here. For your first game, keep it short, keep it small, keep it manageable, and then after that, again, maybe go to a standard size. Standard is pretty good. Well, I usually play on standard myself. I find that the larger maps, the game tends to get quite long, and in the late stage, sometimes it can take quite a long time for the computer players to resolve their turn on these because there's more of them and they tend to have more cities. So I feel that standard really keeps the game going along at a good pace, and I have a pretty good computer, and I find that a little bit slow on large and huge, so I really do think that standard is pretty much as big as I'll normally go, but we're going to go small here. Now, map type, there's quite a few options here. There's going to be a handful in this list, and then if you scroll down, depending on what kind of extra content you've purchased for Civ 5, there'll be tons of other things under these subcategories. The default, though, is continents, and that's what we'll use. Continents and Pangaea are the ones that people tend to play on the most. Continents will have usually 2, maybe 3 big land masses to fight over. In Pangaea, it's just one giant landmass, which makes it a little easier to find everyone and get to know everyone, and no one's going to kind of be isolated. And then there's various other types, but I really do recommend these two, especially early on. Archipelago is not bad, but we're going to stick on continents. It is the default. And then we get to pick our leader. Now, for this game, I was thinking that I would start with Elizabeth. And the reason that I was going to do that is because she doesn't have any really weird stuff in the early game. Each leader has a unique ability and has 2 other unique things. Often it's a unique unit, like here Darius gets an immortal plus a unique building. For example, Satrap's Court. Some leaders get really bizarre things like terrain improvements. Elizabeth only gets 2 unique units. She doesn't get a unique building, which means all the buildings we're going to talk about in the game are going to be totally normal, generic buildings. And that's really the backbone of understanding Civ, is understanding what all the basic buildings do. And her unique ability is very straightforward. Her naval units move faster, and she gets an extra spy. We'll see how the spy works later on. So that's why I'm going to pick Elizabeth, because she's very sort of vanilla and easy to understand. That doesn't make her weak. The extra spy is actually quite handy, and the longbowmen are fantastically potent units. So with all that done, we're going to go ahead and start the game. It'll take a little bit time for the map to be generated, and of course we hear a little bit of flavor text.
You lead and protect the celebrated maritime nation.
I'm just going to go and bring that down just a little bit as I talk over the lovely voiceover because of YouTube issues. So there we go. We're going to click begin the journey, and that'll go away. So the very first thing we'll be presented with is this initial scene. Now, actually, yours will be a little bit different. Let me show you what yours will most likely look like. Of course, you'll have a different starting situation than I do, right? It's random every time. If for some reason you don't like your start, you can go to the menu, and if you click Restart Game, it'll keep all your settings as is, but it will regenerate the map, for example. So you'll get a different set of starting circumstances. Now, the very first thing I like to do before I do anything else is I do like to go down to the bottom right corner here by the minimap, this little scroll icon. I click on that, and I like to turn on the resource icons. And the reason is, on the map, there are different things. If I mouse over, you can just see where my mouse is now. If I mouse over the terrain, you can see a tooltip that shows up there. So this will indicate this is grassland. This is stone, which is a special resource. And over here, we've got silk, which is a special resource. And also at sea, we've got pearls over here, more special resources. But I find they're a little bit difficult to see, and most people I know like to play with the resource icons turned on. That way, all the special resources on the map are very highly visible, and it means you can't really miss them because we're going to get little tags. I'm also personally quite keen on turning on the hex grid because I think it makes it a little bit more clear as to what tile I'm walking on. Sure, it doesn't make the map look quite as pretty and smooth, but I like the extra clarity. Some people like to play with the yield icons turned on, but A, I think that's too cluttered, and B, we're going to talk about what all that means later on. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this little map icon. Thing below it is a strategic view, which just makes the game look a little bit more like a board game. Some people will play this because it's quicker on their computer, but most people play like this. We'll note if your clouds for some reason are black instead of white and fluffy, it's probably because you have a video card that can't support DirectX 10, and that's fine. Your black sort of blocky fog of war your game is going to run perfectly fine. It's just going to be slightly less pretty. Okay. Let's talk about the units that are in the middle of the screen right now. We start with 2. We start with the settler unit, which is what's selected over here, and we start with a warrior unit. I can use my left mouse button to select different units. You can see there's a bit of a glow around them. Also in the bottom left corner of the screen, it shows me what I currently have selected. Now, your settler is a very important special unit. This allows you to create a city. And you can see just to the left of the screen here, you've got a bunch of buttons which are the actions that these units can take. Most military units, like this warrior, will have this view. They can attack a unit if there happens to be something nearby. They can move. They can do nothing and just skip their turn. They can go on alert mode, which is they stop bothering you. They just stand still. But if ever they see an enemy, then they'll sort of wake up and prompt you for an action. And there's a little pull down menu over here that gives you a few more. The ability to destroy a unit, the ability to have it automatically explore the map, and the setting to just fortify. So with alert, the unit will fortify, but then will wake up when it sees an enemy. With fortify, it just stays fortified, which means A, it won't bother you, it won't wake up, it won't prompt you for an action. You can see down here, we are being prompted that a unit needs orders, and if I click that, it'll cycle around between the units. So by fortifying or going to alert mode, it'll stop bothering you for that prompt, but fortify will not automatically wake up. The nice thing about being fortified, your unit gets an extra defensive boost, so it makes you really, sort of defend an area. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later on. For now, let's take our settler. Now, if you get to be a better player, sometimes there are situations where you may want to move your settler. Actually, we should talk about movement first. I'm going to select my warrior. Now, I can move my warrior anywhere I want, well, within reason here. If I click on the move mode button over here, you'll see my cursor will change to show me how my warrior would walk somewhere. So if I were to left click right over here, okay, my warrior would move left here, and then would actually stop. You see that number 1? That means that's as far as it can get in one turn. On the next turn, it would then march northwest until it reached the 2. And then that would be the end of that turn. And then on the turn after that, it would move west one more onto the 3, and then it would stop there. So you can queue up distant movement if you want. Now, you don't have to use the move button for that. If you want, as long as your unit is selected, you can just hold the right mouse button, and you'll get exactly the same interface. Now, for now, I'm going to use the warrior to sort of scout around here. I want to move the map. If I left-click on anywhere on the screen and drag, I can pan the screen around. In the bottom right corner is the mini-map. This is my known world. Right now, you can see it very clearly is exactly what we can see on the map over here. But as we explore more, the mini-map will sort of zoom out more and more and more and show you more of your environments. So I'm going to go ahead and move the warrior. Over here, you can see that my warrior has 2 movement. Okay, he has a total of 2 movement, and he currently has 2 available. Every tile you move uses 1 point of movement. So what I'm going to do, this is not literally the most optimal move right now, but I want to demonstrate. So the blue line shows you as far as you can get in one turn, right? Just as we discussed here. So if I move southwest here, I will now have 1 of 2 movement left, so I can still move 1 more tile. And then we'll use that to move onto this forested grassland hill, which gives me a nice vision radius. If you're standing on top of the hill, you can see further. If you're standing on flat land, you can't see through forest, for example. So and this is jungle tiles the same way. I'll show you that next turn. Next turn, I'll move down to the cows over here. I'll be able to see these 2 jungle tiles, but I won't be able to see what's on the other side. Hills allow you to sort of see over things, which is quite interesting. So I still need to move my settler. Or I need to take an action with my settler. I could move it. It also has 2 movement, but the game will usually will always put your settler in a reasonable starting location, usually one that has a lot of resources. You can see here we've got a couple of stone, we've got lots of pearls, we've got some silk, we're actually quite close to some cattle as well. It's a great starting location. Advanced players may occasionally move 1 or 2 tiles before starting their city, but I always recommend that new players settle in place. We're going to do that. We're going to hit this button right over here to found a city. Click that. And now we have founded London. So our settler unit has gone away. We have a city here instead. What this panel represents on the left-hand side, that's our current population. There's 1 unit of population here. There's no real great way to directly map this into numbers. You can imagine that maybe is like 1,000 people living here. But later on, when your city gets to like size 20, that probably represents something more like 10 million people. So it grows kind of exponentially that way, or geometrically, or something. I don't do math. So this white outline over here shows the limit of my borders. This is the borders of my entire nation. When you found a city, you automatically gain possession of every tile or hex adjacent to that city. But eventually, you will automatically grow. London is producing a certain amount of culture. The more culture it produces, the more tiles it will start to claim, and it will do so automatically. At this point, let's go ahead and click on the word London. This will bring me into the city view. Starting from the top, again, we can see our city name. This 10 over here, this represents the combat strength of the city. Just like units cities have a certain amount of combat strength, and if you can increase that combat strength, it makes the city harder and harder to be conquered, which is quite good. At 10, it's pretty weak, but it's very early in the game. As the population grows, it will get stronger. You can see there's an edit button over here that lets you just rename the city if we would like, and these two arrows over here lets us cycle between all of our own cities. They don't do anything right now because we only have the one city. Over on the right-hand side, it will give us a list of every building in the city. Our capital automatically gets a palace, which gives us a bunch of stuff. We'll talk about that later on. There's also something here called citizen management. If I click on that, I get the ability to change the focus of my city. The default focus tries to work the sort of tiles that are the best overall. What does that mean? Well, let me scroll in here just a little bit to show the case. So we've got our city, and we've got the surrounding tiles, and there's little icons on every single one of these. You can only see those icons if you have the citizen management opened up. So what does it mean? Apples are food production. Apples are food, hammers are production. Production is used to build things like buildings and units. Some tiles, like over here, also have gold coin, that's money, and so on and so forth. Now, your citizens, right now, London has a population of 1. And this little green person over here shows what tile that population is working. So our 1 population in London is working this tile with a stone, which is producing 2 food and 1 hammer. You'll also notice that the center tile, the city itself, automatically produces a little bit. It'll produce 2 food and 1 hammer. This is free. This doesn't require any population to work. So in total, that should mean we produce 4 food and 2 hammers. And if we look over on the left-hand side, you see our food production over here. If I mouse over, it will tell us how much we produce. You can see we produce 4 food from terrain. That makes sense. This hex and this hex, that comes out to 4 food. You can see that we have 2 food left as a total. And why is that? Each unit of population in the city eats 2 food. So if you're not working enough food tiles, your city won't grow. That's why food is the single most important resource in the game for your new cities, because the more food you have, the faster the cities will grow, or the bigger it can grow. So like a city in the desert, for example, won't get a lot of food, so the city won't grow very big. And big cities are powerful cities. You can see there's a bunch of other things: production, gold, science, faith, and tourism, and culture. And we'll talk about this all a little bit more down the road. But you might notice something. Our production, we have 5 production in total. But we only have 1 hammer here and 1 hammer here. Where's the other 3 production coming from? If you mouse over, it says from buildings. And again, if we look at our palace is actually providing us with 3 production, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So our capital will always be quite productive early on in the game. And in fact, throughout the entirety of the game, your capital will usually be your most important city. We're going to talk about more of these tile stuff later on. If I click return to map, I'll go back out to the screen here. You'll notice my prompt in the bottom right corner. It's no longer saying that I have it to move a unit. It's telling me I have to choose production. Well, let's click on that and see what it means. It centered the view on London. Did you notice? Let me try that again. I will click here. It centers the view on London to show us that it's London that's important. And London needs to start building something. Your cities always have to be producing something. In this case, we've got a choice of 4 different units, although we can't currently build a settler. Settlers can only be built in cities that have at least 2 citizens. We can also build a worker. A worker is used to improved terrain. Well, we're definitely going to talk about workers relatively soon. Scouts are like warriors. So we've got our warrior over here. And if we look at our warrior and our scout, the warrior takes longer to build, but it has a combat strength of 8, whereas the scout only has a combat strength of 5. The big difference between the scouts and the warriors is, okay, so the scouts are weaker, but cheaper. But more importantly, they can walk through difficult terrain much easier. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to have to talk about that next turn once our warrior moves again. I'm going to recommend for your first construction, the monument is also good. We're going to talk about culture really soon. For your first thing that you build in your starting city, I would really recommend that you build a scout. Virtually every game. There's an argument to be made to build a monument first, so long as you don't go with the traditional social policy. You may not know what a social policy is yet, so let's talk about that later. Let's just build a scout. So now you can see London is building a scout, and it's going to take 5 turns for it to do so. Why does it take 5 turns for London to build a scout? It has a cost of 25 hammers. And if we click on London itself, oops, I got the production screen up again. If I click on London itself, it's producing 5 hammers, so 25 divided by 5 is 5, so that's why it's going to take 5 turns to build a scout. So more production equals faster stuff. Now, I'd still like to go to our next turn, but I can't yet. I have to choose research. Okay. Throughout the game, you start at 4000 BC with very little knowledge of anything. You do start with the knowledge of agriculture, which means you can build farms, but that's about it. For example, we actually don't know how to domesticate animals yet. That's the animal husbandry ability, for example. We don't know how to work the stone properly. We need masonry for that. We don't know how to collect the pearls and actually really take advantage of the sea. We need I can't remember what the tech is called. I mean, cheat. You need sailing for that. So there are technologies we need just to get started. And certainly later on, we're going to want the ability to build tanks and spaceships and all kinds of awesome stuff like that. So we do that via research. So when you click on choose research, it shows you every technology that is currently available for you to research right now. Pottery, animal husbandry, archery, and mining. We can also open the technology tree up here and see the entirety of every technology available in the game, all the way to the end when you get nuclear fusion and particle physics and all sorts of crazy stuff. That's quite far away. We're still in the ancient era over here, and we start off with the knowledge of agriculture, and agriculture leads to the 4 technologies we had the option of doing. If I research pottery, then after that I will have the ability to research sailing, calendar, writing, and animal husbandry, archery, mining. So this is, again, it's a tree that you sort of progress down. What do you research first is an excellent question. Your priorities early on in the game for research is, one, you want technologies that let you take advantage of the special resources that are around your capital. So we would like to be able to work stone. And if we mouse over the stone, now not the tooltip literally next to my mouse, but the one that comes up right over here next to the next turn button, you can see for stone, it says you require masonry. And for silk, it requires calendar. And for pearls, we require sailing. So unlocking technologies that give you the ability to work those resources, that's the first high priority. Another high priority might be defense. So for example, archery unlocks the ability to build archers, which are great early game ranged units. That's another priority. Now, if you're playing on a low difficulty setting, you're going to be pretty safe. You really don't have to worry about getting archery very early on. Another priority is writing, because obviously, well, writing's probably pretty good, right? Well, writing specifically unlocks the library, which gives you more science. And why does that matter? Well, every technology, for example, writing over here, costs 55 science points to research. We are making a certain amount of science points per turn based on our city and our population and all that. A library gives us more science, gives us an extra point of science for every 2 citizens in the city with the library, which is really good. The faster you can research, the faster you can get new technologies, which makes you more powerful, and so on and so forth. And finally, pottery is actually really quite good by itself for 2 reasons. One, you can build a granary. You can say granary if you want, but granary is it's the more correct way of saying it. Granaries give you more food, which means your cities grow faster, which means they get more powerful. You can see a granary produces 2 food per turn by itself. It also costs you 1 gold per turn for maintenance, but it's generally worth it. Furthermore, if you happen to have any wheat, bananas, or deer in the city with your granary, you'll get even more bonus food. Now, I don't think we do. No, and we don't. Still, it's probably worth building a granary in London because of that. The other thing that pottery gives you is the ability to build shrines, which produce faith points, which let you get pantheons and let you create religions, which are really, really, really good. I will generally recommend that you actually start with pottery. I'm going to say start with pottery, and then pick up a technology that you might need to hook up a resource, or especially a luxury resource. They're quite nice. An early animal husbandry is nice too, even if you don't have cows. Now, we do have cows near London, and London's borders will grow. A city can eventually grow to work tiles 3 hexes away. So 1, 2, 3. We can eventually work these cows with London. However, we can't reach these. If we check 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles away. So London won't be able to take advantage of these cattle, but we will get the silk, all the pearls, the stone here, and these cows. To work the cattle, we do need animal husbandry, but animal husbandry also reveals horses on the map. There are resources on the map you don't start off knowing about. So horses is an example. Iron is another example over here that you get with bronze working. What's the next one that you can see? I think I've missed one. But industrialization will show you coal. Biology will show you oil. And atomic theory will show you uranium. Oh, aluminum is in here somewhere too. I missed, electricity. Electricity reveals aluminum. So what's great about revealing those resources is right away they improve the terrain. If we compare here, this is a grasslands tile that produces 2 food. This is a grassland tile with stone on it. It produces 2 food and a hammer. So if there happen to be horses on this tile, horses also add an extra hammer, an extra point of production. So just by researching the technology that reveals horses, we would get the ability to produce more stuff. That's really good. But also, then we could build improvements. We could build a pasture on the horses, which give us even more stuff, which makes it even better. So those are all high priority. For now, we're going to be happy with pottery. We're going to be happy with building the scout. And we are going to go ahead and hit the next turn button. And we're also going to put a cut in this video. So 25 minutes, that was the first turn of the game. But in the next one, we're going to continue moving around. And we're going to talk about expanding, building settlers, starting religions, and also culture. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.